Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep into the world of agroecology today. But we're not just talking about what happens out in the fields.
Yeah.
We're going a little deeper this time,
Yeah.
looking at how policies can actually help agroecology really take off.
Exactly.
Shape a future where agriculture and ecosystems can work in harmony.
Absolutely.
Now, I think most of our listeners are probably already familiar with agroecology.
Yeah.
They know it's not just about organic farming, right? It's a whole different approach.
Oh, for sure. It's way more than just organic.
And our handbook, Introduction to Agroecology, lays it all out. It calls it a science, a practice, and a movement.
That's right. A whole system.
And today we're focusing on Chapter 7, Governance and Policy in Agroecology. We'll be looking at how the right policies can help agroecology thrive, bring together farmers, scientists, and even us, the consumers, for a more sustainable future.
And it's such an important piece of the puzzle. People often think of policies as just rules, but they're really the foundation that allows agroecology to really flourish. Like, imagine building a house without a strong foundation. It just wouldn't stand.
Okay, I get that analogy. Policies are the foundation, but what about the real-world barriers farmers face every day? I mean, even if they want to adopt agroecological practices, there are a lot of hurdles.
Right, and that's where those targeted policies come in. They can help overcome hurdles like access to land,
Yeah.
water rights, even navigating those really complex market systems.
Those can be huge roadblocks.
Huge, especially for farmers who are, trying to switch to agroecological practices.
So it's not enough to just say, hey, everyone, switch to agroecology. We need to provide the support system.
Absolutely.
Like, are there any good examples of this in action?
Oh, there are, yeah. The European Union's Common Agricultural Policy, or CAP, it's a great example.
Right.
They've actually incorporated what they call greening measures.
I've heard about those.
Yeah, they incentivize farmers to actually adopt practices that are good for the environment.
So they're putting their money where their mouth is. But have those CKP reforms actually been effective? Like, can we see any real measurable results from those policy changes?
Yeah.
Because our listeners are all about real-world outcomes.
And that's a great question. It's something researchers are looking into. They're actively exploring it. It's still kind of early.
Yeah.
But early assessments are, suggesting that these reforms have actually led to an increase in the adoption of eco-friendly practices,
Yeah.
like reducing fertilizer use and diversifying those crop rotations.
So it's not just a feel-good policy. There's some substance to it.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing those policy shifts aren't just happening in Europe, right?
Oh, definitely not. Our handbook highlights that Latin America is becoming a real leader in this area. They're actually putting laws into place,
Whoa.
specifically designed to support agroecological farming.
I'd love to hear more about that. What are they doing specifically?
Well, Brazil's national policy for agroecology and organic production, they call it PNAPO, it's a prime example.
Okay.
And this policy goes beyond just incentives, It aims to create an entire framework that integrates agroecology into Brazilian agriculture.
So they're not just dipping their toes in the water. They're going all in.
Yeah, it's a pretty bold move. And what's interesting is it really focuses on empowering local communities and traditional knowledge, recognizing that, sustainable agriculture isn't one size fits all.
Right. Solutions need to be tailored to each region.
Exactly. And that's where collaboration becomes so essential in agroecology.
Okay, let's talk collaboration.
Yeah.
Our handbook emphasizes that agroecology thrives on teamwork, but what does that actually look like on the ground?
Think of it like a giant puzzle, right?
Okay.
Where each piece represents a different stakeholder, So you've got farmers, scientists, policymakers, consumers. They each bring their own knowledge to the table.
So it's not just scientists in their labs telling farmers what to do. It's a two-way street.
Exactly. It's about scientists and farmers working together, side by side in the field, sharing knowledge, finding solutions together. That's where the real magic happens.
Our handbook does mention some really cool examples of this type of collaboration. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
There are some amazing international networks out there, like the Scaling Up Agroecology Initiative.
I've heard of that.
It's really interesting. It helps with knowledge sharing and policy dialogues across borders.
It's like a global support system.
Yeah, exactly. Like farmers in different countries, they can connect with each other, learn from each other's experiences, and even influence those policy decisions on a global scale.
That's amazing. But, I'm always thinking about the future. What lies ahead for agroecology? What does the handbook say about that?
The future. It's full of both challenges and exciting possibilities. The handbook describes it as like navigating uncharted territory. There are a lot of unknowns.
Uncharted territory can be scary, but it can also be really exciting. What are some of the specific challenges that the handbook points to?
Well, climate change is a big one, of course.
Of course.
As weather patterns become less predictable, and we
Yeah.
see more extreme events, agroecological systems will really need to adapt and become more resilient. We'll need some innovative solutions to make sure we have food security, in the face of all these changes.
Makes sense. It's not just about preserving the practices we have now. We need to keep evolving.
Right.
What other challenges are on the horizon?
Well, another big one is economic viability. Many small-scale farmers are already struggling, and that transition to agroecology,
Yeah, it can be tough.
it can require some upfront investments and, even a shift in thinking.
Right.
Policies really need to address these economic realities and give farmers the support they need.
So it's about making sure agroecology is accessible to everyone, not just those with a lot of resources.
Exactly. And this ties into another important area, fair market access. Farmers need, reliable access to markets where they can actually sell their products at a fair price. And this often means thinking about different ways to, get those products to consumers.
I see what you're saying. Shorter supply chains.
Hmm.
Giving consumers more transparency about where their food is coming from.
Sure.
But how do policies fit into that? Can they help with those kinds of market shifts?
Oh, yeah. Policies can be a big help in promoting those alternative markets. Like they can provide financial support for farmers market.
Okay, yeah.
Community-supported agriculture programs.
CSAs.
Yeah, exactly. CSAs and other initiatives that connect producers and consumers directly. And policies can help create those labeling standards and certification programs
Okay.
so that consumers can easily identify and choose, food that's produced agroecologically.
It's about creating that demand, making those products stand out. But I'm thinking about the farmers themselves. Don't they need more support to actually make that transition to agroecology?
Absolutely. The handbook really stresses how important farmer education and training is. A lot of farmers might not be familiar with agroecological practices, so they need those workshops,
Yeah.
training programs, even mentorship opportunities. It's crucial.
Makes sense. I imagine some farmers might be a little hesitant to jump in and try new things.
Yeah.
It's a big change, and, there's always risk involved.
And that's another area where policies can really step in and help. They can offer those financial incentives for farmers who are willing to experiment with these agroecological practices. Or even, crop insurance programs specifically designed for agroecological systems, just to give farmers a little more security, and encourage them to take those first steps.
It sounds like a whole support system is needed, not just a few policies here and there. It's about making agroecology a core part of how our food system works.
Yeah, it's about a real paradigm shift.
Love a good paradigm shift. But I have to admit, it all feels a little overwhelming sometimes. Where do we even begin with something this big?
Well, the handbook offers some helpful ideas. It points to the importance of local and regional initiatives as a good place to start.
So, thinking smaller scale first.
Yeah.
Community-based efforts.
Exactly. Local communities understand their own needs and challenges way better, right? And they can be so innovative in finding solutions that work for them.
Can you give us some concrete examples of these local initiatives? I think our listeners would really connect with that.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine a community coming together to set up a seed bank.
Okay.
A place to store and preserve those local varieties that are perfectly adapted to their specific climate and
Yeah.
soil conditions, or a group of farmers who get together and create a local food hub so they can sell directly to consumers in their area. Those kinds of initiatives can be so powerful.
Yeah.
And they often end up being models that other communities can learn from and even scale up to larger regions.
It shows that change doesn't have to just come from the top down, right? It can start at the grassroots level.
Exactly. And these local efforts can have a ripple effect, inspiring other communities and even, influencing policies at higher levels. It's about building this network of change makers who share the same vision.
Which brings us back to collaboration again. It seems like it's not just about collaborating within a community, but also between different communities and even regions.
That's exactly right. Sharing knowledge and resources, and those successful strategies is key for scaling up agroecology. Something that works in one region might not work somewhere else, so adapting and learning from each other is super important.
Like building a global tapestry of agroecology, each community brings its own unique thread.
I love that. And the more diverse those threads, the stronger that tapestry becomes. But, let's be realistic for a second. We've been talking about all these positive ideas and initiatives, but there are going to be challenges, right? What are some of the potential pitfalls we need to watch out for?
Well, one challenge that the handbook points out is co-optation. Agroecology is getting more popular, and there's a risk that, big corporations or industrial agriculture
Right.
might try to rebrand their practices as agroecological.
So basically greenwashing.
Yeah, exactly. It's important to really look closely and evaluate those sustainability claims carefully. True agroecology, it's not just about adopting a few surface level practices. It's about a deeper change in values and a commitment to social and ecological justice.
You're right. It's not just about what happens on the farm. It's about the whole system and the values behind it. So how do we make sure agroecology doesn't just become another buzzword? How do we prevent it from being watered down? That's where we need some strong definitions and clear standards. We need to create a really clear framework, to separate authentic agroecology from those practices that are just, pretending to be sustainable.
Right. So it's not just a checklist. It's about the impact.
Yeah, exactly. Like evaluating the overall impact on the environment, on social equity, on the well-being of those farming communities.
That makes sense.
But who gets to decide what those criteria are? There are probably a lot of different opinions on what true agroecology even means, right?
Oh, there definitely are. And that's where we need those, inclusive dialogues and participatory processes. It's about getting everybody to the table. Farmers, scientists, policymakers, consumers. Everyone needs to have a voice.
So finding that common ground, but also respecting all those different perspectives and experiences.
Right. Because agroecology isn't just one thing, It's a dynamic approach. It's constantly evolving and needs to be adaptable to different situations.
So those definitions and standards, they need to be flexible enough to take into account those local variations while still upholding those core principles,
The sustainability, the social justice aspects.
Exactly.
This brings us back to collaboration. We talked about it at the local level, farmers and scientists working together. But it sounds like we need it on a much bigger scale, too.
Oh, absolutely. We need collaboration across different sectors, different regions, even different countries. And that's where international organizations and those networks can really play a big role, like facilitating knowledge sharing, promoting dialogue, supporting those policies that align with agroecological principles.
Creating a global movement, you could say.
A global movement for sustainable agriculture.
Yeah.
And it's all rooted in that local knowledge and driven by those shared values.
And that movement, it's already gaining momentum.
Oh, yeah.
We're seeing more and more awareness of the need for a more just and sustainable food system. And agroecology is offering this, powerful path to get there.
I think so, too.
It's pretty inspiring, to see all these people coming together, working towards a better future for food and agriculture.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's important for everyone to realize, that we all play a part in this. It doesn't matter if you're a farmer or a scientist or a policymaker or just a consumer.
Yeah.
Our choices, our actions, they make a difference.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the policy side of agroecology, is there a final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I would just encourage everyone, think about the power you have to shape the future of how we eat. Support those farmers who are using these agroecological practices. Advocate for policies that support sustainable agriculture and make those conscious choices about the food you buy. Every action you take, even the small ones, they all contribute to a more just and resilient world.
That's a great message to end on. It's a reminder that we're all connected and our choices can really create a wave of positive change. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into agroecology.